Hey, this is Ibeck. He has 100 clamshells in his pockets. However, for what? He has to take part in an auction and he is not alone. There are millions of people, who also have 100 clamshells. For now, let us just assume that everyone, including Ibeck, has the same natural talents. What are they going to bid for? For all of the resources of their society. Money, water, books, and every other good that exists. Everyone can bid for their own bundle of goods. This thought experiment was introduced by Ronald Dworkin, though he does not mention Ibeck, but let's keep him, because we need Ibeck to illustrate our point. If Ibeck wants to be a tennis player, then he can bid for a bundle of goods that allow Ibeck to become one. He can obtain the tennis court, equipment and all the other stuff that he needs. Similarly, everyone else can bid for the preferred lifestyle. Some get the bundle for a gardener, some for being an actor, some for chilling at home with a lifetime Netflix subscription. If the auction works out well, everybody will be happy with the result in the sense that they do not prefer anyone else's bundle of goods to their own. For instance, if Ibeck is happy with his bundle of goods and wouldn't prefer the other bundle, then the auction went well for Ibeck. If Ibeck ends up regretting his choice, we can always rerun the auction. In the end, Ibeck and everyone else will have a bundle they prefer over all other bundles. According to Dworkin, this means they have passed the envy test. If it is met, Dworkin believes that people are treated with equal consideration. Only personal ambitions and beliefs about what gives value to life reflect the differences between the choices of bundles. Dworkin's idea is a crucial one. Because a successful auction would make people pay for the choices. What does it mean? Let's take a few steps back. Most of us agree that social inequality is bad as it makes some people live in dire conditions, while others live in luxury. Some philosophers tried to come with an idea of solving the problem of social inequality. For example, John Rawls, another philosopher, proposed the idea of the difference principle. It states that inequalities are allowed only if it benefits the least well-off. Again, sounds good. What is the problem then? Let's imagine that we have managed to equalize the social and natural circumstances of everyone. Essentially, people are equally talented and share similar social backgrounds. To equalize them further, let's divide all of the resources equally among people. The idea initially seems good. Everyone can do whatever they want with their share. And it is fair, because everyone received the same share. But do you remember our Ibeck and his love for tennis? In Rawls' world, Ibeck will be given land. Yes, he will play tennis there. This is the way of leading life for him. Ibeck is happy when he can play tennis. This is the way he was born and we cannot do much about that. If Ibeck is happy, why is this a problem then? Because Ibeck can't play tennis his whole life. Eventually, he will have fewer and fewer resources to sustain his lifestyle. At the same time, some people chose to use their land for farming. While Ibeck was busy at the tennis court, farmers have generated more revenue by selling the crops. By the time, the gap between Ibeck and farmers will continue to increase, and this is how social inequality takes place. But remember that social inequality is so bad that we can't have it. Rawls' theory would support helping Ibeck. Where will the money come from? From farmers. Wait, but isn't it unfair for farmers who have spent personal effort to forge their wealth? Why should they pay for Ibeck's choice of playing tennis? This is the question that was left unresponded by Rawls. His theory makes people pay for other people's choices. Now let's come back to Dworkin. His auction solves that problem. In Dworkin's world, social inequality is still possible. But, it is okay. Everyone, including farmers and Ibeck, had an equal chance to bid for the lifestyle they wanted. Nobody can legitimately complain about each other, because they were treated with equal consideration. Therefore, successful auctions fulfill 2 out of 3 objectives of Rawls' theory. It respects people's moral equality and accepts responsibility for our choices. What about the third one? So far, we've assumed that people are equally talented. However, in reality it is far from being true. Mitigation of arbitrariness of natural and social contingencies is the third objective of Rawls' theory. Let's drop our initial assumption and look at how Dworkin attempts to achieve the third objective. Dworkin proposes to create a market on which people would be able to buy insurance to protect themselves from unpredictable misfortunes, such as physical or mental disabilities that they can be endowed with. In other words, imagine Ibeck, who is under a veil of ignorance and does not know how the natural talents are going to be distributed. We provide him with 100 clamshells and ask which proportion of this money he is willing to spend for assurance that would provide him with coverage against the natural disadvantages he might be born with. Seems interesting. However, Richard Arneson has significantly undermined the value of such a model. What does Arneson say about that? Imagine Ibeck is offered an opportunity to spend some of his resources to ensure he will be subsidized by the government in case he is born blind or deaf. However, the distribution proposed by Dworkin is barely going to improve Ibeck's situation if he is born with disabilities. Then, his disability becomes very demanding in a sense that it requires disproportionate redistribution of resources in order to somehow make Ibeck better off than he previously was. This obviously comes at the cost of the people who were born without any disabilities. So, according to Arneson, the majority of the people would decide not to have such an insurance given that there is an equal probability of being born with and without disabilities. Arneson goes further and explains that if money is more useful for an able-bodied person rather than for a disabled one, then Ibeck, as an average community member, would prefer to have a type of insurance that would transfer money from the disabled people to able-bodied people. As a result, the fair insurance model proposed by Dworkin would turn out to be not that fair and just. Apart from that, in the real world, auction analogy would fail. Dworkin assumes that people are not disadvantaged in their natural assets. For example, if Ibeck was handicapped, 100 clamshells would not be enough for him. He still can compete for the same amount of social bundles, but we need to keep in mind that he also has special needs that must be addressed, so Ibeck would end up less well off. We think that it's time to propose some critique on Dworkin's idea about envy test, and we will start from Colin MacLeod. MacLeod claims that it is crucial to note that the envy test alone does not provide a sufficient criterion of a just distribution in these circumstances. For example, if a distribution of resources is performed by one person, it can satisfy some people, but it also may be unfair toward others, because it may favor some tastes over others. Simple envy test is not sensitive, because in distributing resources a divider must determine what combination of resources will make up each bundle. However, there can be more than one combination that will satisfy the envy test, and individuals can have conflicting preferences about the most desirable combination. Here is a simple illustration of the problem. Suppose the divider is faced with the task of distributing 99 oranges and 99 apples to 3 people, Ibeck and his friends Tuluhan and Galamsjan. One distribution that will pass the envy test is to give each person 33 oranges and 33 apples. Since each person's bundle of resources is identical, no one can prefer the bundle held by someone else. However, this division might arbitrarily favor some tastes over others. Suppose, for instance, that Ibeck likes apples and oranges equally well, while Tuluhan likes only apples, and Galamsjan likes only oranges. Ibeck's taste for a mixed diet is favored over the tastes of Tuluhan and Galamsjan, who would prefer a different ratio of oranges and apples in their own bundle. Clearly, this initial distribution satisfies the envy test, but because it arbitrarily favors Ibeck's tastes over the tastes of Tuluhan and Galamsjan, it might be unfair. He claims that the introduction of special auction of the island's resources in which individuals have equal bidding power is Dworkin's favored solution to overcoming the problem posed by the simple envy test, but which has a difficulties in terms of preferences of Ibeck, Tuluhan and Galamsjan. Alan Hunt's main criticism is based on a collection of 9 academic reports. The first point of criticism describes that the effectiveness of the Dworkin system depends on the political structure in which it will be applied. For example, if this will be implemented in the era of capitalism, then Ibeck having the same number of shells with Galamsjan may have unequal conditions for their implementation. The main reason is the social inequalities that are created by the priorities of the political structure. For a better understanding, let's look at an example. Throughout the history of mankind, there have been many types of discrimination, such as racial, religious, gender stereotypes. And if Ibeck is born in a family that practices an unconventional religion, and Galamsjan is born in a family whose religion is socially widespread in the society, then even if they spend their shells on the same resources to create the garden to sell fruit, then there is a better chance that Galamsjan will have more buyers due to the fact that the population of this society prioritizes representatives of his religion. Such discriminatory stereotypes can appear in any political system where there is a certain division of society into communes. But even if we imagine an ideal world where all people are equal to each other and can be whoever they want without consequences at the level of priority in society, then most likely this should be accompanied by the absolute strength of the leading ministry of the state and the absence of errors among the bureaucracy and the people or machines that are engaged in distribution. But while such a system can have errors, then these errors can be of great importance in people's lives. For example, if Ibeck at the time of the auction understands that when he wanted to buy conditions for playing tennis for his shells, and he was given conditions for playing table tennis due to a human factor or a system error, then most likely Ibeck will be unhappy throughout his life. But even if a mechanism is created that never makes a mistake, a question arises regarding the invulnerability of this distribution from outside interference. But Ibeck believes that all these problems can be resolved by a responsible approach to creating a distribution system. Ibeck is most concerned about the fact that he never gave consent on birth in such a system, and that even if it is so elaborate, he does not want to live in a situation where almost everything is decided at auction. Ibeck understands that even if not he, then a person may appear who will be against life in the Dworkin system, and the system leaves him an outcast of such a society that is not good and not fair, because everyone can be born with such a desire. Another philosopher, Samuel Scheffler, also disagrees with Dworkin. Scheffler says Dworkin's terms about welfarism and expensive tastes are too broad and, therefore, confusing. One of the criticisms addressed the talent auction. Scheffler emphasized that there are a lot of things that can affect the way our personalities are formed, but which are unclear whether they happened out of choice or circumstances. Two examples on which Scheffler bases his criticisms. First one is ambition. By Dworkin's logic, things like ambitions are put under a label of choice, rather than circumstance, because ambition is not like talents or handicaps that we are just given randomly. Scheffler says that Ibeck, for example, might have not chosen consciously to become a tennis player. That idea of him becoming a tennis player might have derived as an unchosen ambition. His childhood might have formed the idea of him becoming a tennis player, or his parents might have imposed that ambition on him. Scheffler emphasizes the problem with classifying things binary. It is impossible to divide all the things only as choice, or only as a circumstance, because some factors still serve as a huge influence on us, but cannot be fully considered as our choice. Ibeck's will to become a tennis player can be an intersection of both choice and circumstance. Scheffler's second example is personal traits. To illustrate, Ibeck is trying to find a proper job or is applying to university as a student. A lot of employers look for a specific set of personal traits, while universities try to find ambitious students of a certain type. For instance, employers tend to give more preference to passionate and communicative leaders compared to other types of workers' personalities. Ibeck, being a calm and humble introvert, was denied several jobs in a row. He cannot find employment, because he is not the right type of person that employers are looking for. Is it his fault that he is an introvert? Ibeck became a person he is, not because he chose to. His personality could have been impacted in many ways by the external factors such as family, politics, socio-economic status and many more. As a result, he is considered not suitable to get a job that he wants, simply because of his personal traits that he does not necessarily have full control of. Can we count Ibeck's introvert and calm personality as a choice, or as a circumstance? Some might propose that Ibeck should just adapt to the reality to find a job and change his personal traits. But in a lot of instances it is impossible or just hard to become a completely different person. Furthermore, should the state compensate Ibeck for the different personality that he has, as a result of which he cannot realize himself in certain spheres? Scheffler argues that these two examples show that the differences between compensable circumstances and non-compensable choices are a. almost impossible to distinguish, but also b. which one of them is enabled for compensation and which one of them is not. According to Scheffler, those criticisms reveal the inconsistency and contradiction within Dworkin's theory.